Good evening, my friend. I won't keep you waiting. Tonight, you'd better buckle up, because this story is a terrifying one. This is definitely not something you should listen to before bed. The Tale of the Clay Children. Figures made by an old witch. Alright then, here we go. We all love to sculpt as children. With Play-Doh, with dough, with mud. It's an innocent kind of creativity, making little, clumsy figures. But what if I told you that in certain forgotten villages, sculpting with clay isn't a game? It's an ancient, dark ritual. A ritual that could cost you what you hold most dear. Today, I'm going to tell you the legend of the Clay Children. A legend about how sometimes children's toys don't come into a home to be played with, but to replace. It all begins by old, overgrown rivers, where the clay on the banks is especially dark and thick. The local elders say that this clay remembers everything. It remembers tears, pain, and loneliness. The legend says that a witch once lived in these parts, Old Mara, a woman who could never have children of her own. Her despair was so strong that she decided to create them herself, not from flesh and blood, but from river clay. Every night under the full moon, she would go down to the river and sculpt small, faceless figures. She would whisper her unfulfilled dreams into them, pour her sorrow into them, and bind the clay with a drop of her blood. The figures didn't come to life. No, they became empty vessels, vessels that longed to be filled with life. They were created with a single purpose, to find a model and become its perfect copy. Now, imagine a young family, Mark, Sarah, and their 7-year-old son, Leo. They bought an old house on the edge of the village, right by that same river. The dream of a quiet life. One day, while playing on the bank, Leo found a strange figurine, a small clay man, crudely sculpted, with no face. He brought it home. His parents laughed. What a funny little thing. They let him keep it. This was their first mistake. Leo named the figure Glinka. He never parted with it for a moment. He placed it by his bed every single night. And that's when the strange things began. Small things at first. Food would disappear from the table. At night, the parents would hear soft, wet, slapping sounds, as if someone was walking barefoot through the house. Their dog, a loyal Labrador, started growling at Leo's room, but would never go inside. Leo himself grew quieter and more withdrawn. He stopped playing with his friends. Glinka doesn't like noise, he would say quietly. He tells me secrets when everyone is asleep. One day, Sarah went into her son's room to clean. She picked up Glinka. The figure was warm, as if a tiny, slow heart was beating inside it. But the most terrifying thing was something else. On the figure's blank head, features were beginning to form, features that were painfully familiar. They were Leo's eyes, small, perfect copies of her son's eyes, pressed into the damp clay. In horror, Sarah dropped the figure. It hit the floor with a dull, wet thud, but it didn't break. It was unnaturally durable. At that exact moment, Leo screamed from the living room. He had fallen, tripping over nothing, as if the ground had been pulled out from under him. That evening, after putting their son to bed, Mark and Sarah finally talked seriously. There were too many coincidences to ignore. Mark went online. He searched the village name, the words clay dolls, witch. He only found an old abandoned local folklore forum, and there he read the legend about Old Mara, about her clay children, the empty vessels that steal souls to gain their own. The legend said, once the clay fully copies the child's face, it will take their place, and the child will become just clay, a lifeless gray lump. With icy dread, they understood what was happening. Glinka wasn't playing with Leo. It was slowly replacing him. Leo was growing paler. His skin took on a grayish, earthy hue. He barely ate and constantly complained of being cold. And the figurine was looking more and more like their son. The exact curve of his lips appeared, the shape of his nose. The process was almost complete. They had to destroy it. Immediately. That very night. There was no other way. Waiting until Leo was asleep, they quietly entered his room. The figurine sat on the nightstand, and in the moonlight, it seemed to be staring right at them. Mark reached out to grab it, but as his fingers got closer, the figure made a soft, grating sound, like a laugh. And in that instant, Leo twitched in his bed, his breathing becoming shallow. He moaned as if in unbearable pain. They realized the horrifying truth. The figure was connected to Leo. To destroy it would mean killing their own son. In despair, Sarah remembered a line from the forum. What the river has made, only the river can take back. Not destroy, return. They had to throw it back into the river, from whose clay it was created. Mark snatched the figurine. It was ice cold and surprisingly heavy. A wind blew through the house, even though all the windows were shut tight. They ran out of the house, racing towards the river. Behind them, a small shadow watched from Leo's bedroom window. The riverbank was shrouded in a thick fog. The water looked black and still. Mark drew his arm back, and a quiet, pleading whisper echoed in his head. Leo's voice. "Daddy, don't. I'll be cold." For a moment, he froze. But looking at Sarah's face, full of tears and resolve, he made his choice. With a scream, he hurled the figurine into the middle of the river. It went under with a soft gurgle, as if taking a final breath. Instantly, the fog lifted. A light came on in the house above, and they heard the loud, healthy cry of their son. They ran into the house. Leo was sitting up in bed, crying, but his cheeks were rosy and his eyes were clear. He was their son. He didn't remember anything. The last few weeks were a blur to him, like a bad dream. The family was safe. They sold the house and left that village the very next day, trying to forget the nightmare. But the legend of the Clay Children isn't just a scary story about witches and curses. It's a warning that emptiness always seeks to be filled, that despair and loneliness can create something that only imitates life, but can never truly be it. And the most terrifying part? A curse doesn't always disappear forever. Sometimes, it just finds a new host. A few years later, Sarah was cleaning Leo's room. Their life was back to normal. She found an old shoebox under his bed. Smiling, she opened it, expecting to see old toys. Inside, laid out neatly in a row, were 3 small clay figures. 2 of them looked like her and Mark, and the third was a perfect copy of their new dog. And then she understood. The river had taken back the witch's creation, but it hadn't taken back her gift, or her curse. And that's the story, my friend. Or is it just a story? I truly wonder. Let this be a warning. It's best to leave stray things where you find them, because you can never be certain what you're truly bringing into your home.